This Taurus new moon is all about the slow climb and rest as resistance. This is a time in which the things that create the largest impact in our lives are challenging us to take things slow, to move at a pace that is in harmony with our nervous system, while also yielding forms of progress that allow for us to pay attention to the bigger picture while serving the minute or seemingly minute aspects of our mundane lives. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. I'm Jo Hummingbird. I am an Evolutionary Astrologer, Usui Reiki Master, and a Tarot and Oracle Specialist. Today, I have an episode for you all about the upcoming Taurus New Moon that we have happening on Saturday, May 16th at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is a very potent goddess energy-filled new moon that we have for us in store, and I don't want to talk about this new moon lightly. I don't want to fearmonger you with this because this isn't a bad new moon. This isn't something that I want you to also feel ableized by in the sense of perpetuating any ableist ideologies. But this is a new moon that is asking us to take things slow while also honoring the process of what it means to be human and to have great things unfold over time through small actions that surmount to something greater than ourselves, or us contributing to a larger picture, something greater than us that we can't even fully fathom. And so this new moon is super, super important and super, super potent. So with that being said, if you're interested in hearing all about this Taurus new moon, then keep tuned into this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. So I want to break down this episode as per usual into the two different parts. We have the aspects and the cosmic conversations happening between the luminaries and the planets, as well as the themes that we can take a look at and expect to unfold from this new moon itself. So we'll start off pretty basic here with the sun conjunct the moon in Taurus at 25 degrees and 57 minutes by exact conjunction. Now, this is, again, the 25th degree of Taurus, and this is within the Saturnian-ruled decan of Taurus. Now, the Saturn-ruled decan of Taurus is considered the most stubborn of Taurus, and this is where the archetype of Taurus being that strong-headed bull horns first energy really comes from. It doesn't come from the Venusian decan, which is the first 10 degrees. It doesn't come from the Mercurial decan, which is the second 10. It comes from the third 10, which is ruled by Saturn, the planet of karma, of restriction, of boundaries, of discipline, of time, and of, in extreme cases, death. So this is a very protective and grounded new moon that is asking us to be patient, and that patience is potentially being pretty tested depending on where you are in the world and what's going on around you. Goddess forbid that you are in a country that is being affected politically by the anti-humanitarian, whether it's propaganda or action or fill in the blank with whatever that is for you. My love extends out to you. My healing extends out to you. And if there's any way that we can support you beyond that, please let me know in the comments. But with that being said, this new moon, especially in the sign of Taurus, the sign of the toddler, this is the sign of the builder, this is the earth goddess energy. This is one of like two goddess signs in the zodiac. Obviously, Libra is also ruled by Venus, so you could argue that Venus, in rulership of Libra, by default makes Libra a goddess energy, but Libra in and of itself is the masculine expression of Venus, and it is an air sign, which is a masculine element. And so this is kind of a nuanced way to talk about Libra, but this isn't a Libra new or full moon by any means. We've already had that pass a few weeks ago. If you want to check out that episode, even though it isn't really relevant to what we're talking about today, I'll link that on a card on the screen as well as down below in the description box for you, or in the show notes in case you're streaming instead of watching, for you to check that out if you feel called to. Maybe you just feel called to check it out because you yourself have a Libra moon. Cool. Awesome. I will not stop you. But with that being said, Taurus, earth energy of Venus, earth is a feminine element. And the only other, by default, goddess element or sign that is in the zodiac is Cancer, because it is ruled by the moon, the other goddess symbol in astrology. The moon herself is a goddess. According to our ancient cultures, we have the sun god and the moon goddess, and the sun father, the moon mother, and Cancer being the only sign that is ruled by the moon. This gives room for the water energy of the feminine on the left side of the pentacle with water and earth, versus on the right masculine side of the pentacle, which is fire and air. And that's why arguably Libra is not considered a goddess energy. It is a more judicial, it is the masculine expression of divine femininity that holds space for the truth of the feminine to be displayed and weighed. And so with that being said, I digress back into Taurus energy. This goddess type earth grounded emotional energy of Taurus is very in the senses. It's very in the body. It's in the nervous system in a different way than, say, Virgo would be, or that Aquarius would be, or that even potentially Gemini would be. There's not that sort of like mental capacity of what it constitutes the nervous system. It's not just the brain's ability to send chemicals to the nervous system and the synapses to fire off a chemical response within the nervous system to make your body react. It is the reaction itself. It is the body's response to the chemical. It is the way in which we treat our bodies for it to have the capacity to respond in those ways. And so with this Taurus new moon, I digress into the moon having its exaltation in Taurus, and this does allow for some more groundedness within our nervous systems, and this does allow for a little bit more emotional stability. This allows for the goddess energy that happens between the moon and Venus to really harmonize itself out, because Venus is also about harmony as much as it's about our desires, our money, our love, our material possessions. It's also about finding balance. It's about finding the homeostasis within our being, whether that's physical mostly or spiritual, emotionally, psychologically. Because again, Taurus is the senses, and this is on the axis of Taurus and Scorpio, which we just had the Scorpio full moon 2 weeks prior to this. And that is the axis of senses, sensuality, psychology, the nervous system's response to the experience outside of itself. And so with the moon exalted in Taurus, this is a time where emotions are going to be easier to process within the body. They're not going to be super, super stuck within the density of our auric field or within the density of our traumas. This is a position for the moon to be in to allow the wisdom of the feminine to move through our physical being, to yield us the medicine of our emotions, rather than for it to be, something a little bit more scorpionic, where you have to dive deep into the depths and really get under the surface to make sense of things or to extract the medicinal tools from it. This is something that just kind of naturally, because the moon isn't fall in Scorpio, but rather is exalted in Taurus. And so with the exaltation here, this dignity that the moon has in Taurus, it is easier for us to be in our bodies and to feel these emotions and to honor them and to give them the space that they need to breathe. Now, also, with that being said, that's easier for us to release cortisol and to release stress. And if you find yourself crying, or if you find yourself needing to process things psychosomatically to be able to move them through your body easier, that is totally valid and that is totally normal with this new moon. So don't be ashamed of your emotions or shy away from them. Taurus energy is never usually ashamed of itself. So do not be ashamed or perpetuate that within yourself if you need to do something that maybe even outside of your comfort zone, because Taurus is also the comfort zone from a physical standpoint, more so than Cancer with cozy blankets, baked goods, the home, being able to take a nice hot shower, like whatever have you. With the Cancer archetype, the Taurus archetype is I have to feel comfortable in my body. So the clothes that I'm wearing, the way that I'm eating my food, the way that I'm talking to myself, the way that I think about myself, the way that I view my image. Yeah, this is a time where a lot of those things are going to be easier to process. And if that brings about emotional responses for you, honor that. That is totally human, totally valid, and absolutely highlighted by this new moon. Now, moving into the next point here, we do have Mercury conjunct the Sun and Moon in Taurus within a 3-degree orb of separation, also in the Saturnian Decan. Mercury will be at 28 degrees Taurus, and like we mentioned, the moon and sun will both be at 25 degrees. So with that being said, the planet Mercury ruling the mind, ruling communication, ruling analysis, this is a time where your mental health will be a little bit easier to navigate. Now, of course, everybody's individual situation will differentiate from another, and that is not to perpetuate any ableist thinking of if you do experience any mental disability or disorders, or you experience any sort of physical disability or disorder that disables your mentality or challenges it, that it will innately make everything easier and happier for you. That is not what I am saying here, so do not take that as that context or within that context, but rather this is saying that it will be easier to be able to process some of those things, and you might feel some of the pressure release. You might feel like maybe even if you do have a disorder of some kind or a disability of some kind, that you may experience some sort of breakthrough or even just progress in a way that, you know, maybe on the surface is minuscule or seemingly quote unquote irrelevant to your healing process or your journey, but it actually might help you slow down a little bit in the mind to be able to have the capacity within your nervous system and your mind coinciding with each other, because again, Mercury is the mind, the brain, the thing that sends off the chemical response to Taurus, the body, the nervous system itself that responds to that chemical, to be able to communicate easier with each other. Maybe this is a time where you get to experience a little bit of a break, even if it has nothing to do with the astrology. Maybe something happens in a medical breakthrough for you, or something actually works in progress for your health and your healing, and something that, you know, allows you to experience a better quality of life during this new moon. And wonderful. I'm so grateful that that is the case for you, and I celebrate that for you. Now, for those who are in a neurotypical state of operating or in a way of life, this is a time where the analysis paralysis, the overthinking, the overwhelm of the monotony of daily routines of life will tend to slow down. Mercury in Taurus is a time where, having come out of Mercury conjunct Chiron and Aries, this is like a lot of the wounds are being brought up and festered, and mental health is a really, really big topic, and it feels angsty and it feels angry and it feels riled up. And moving from that Martian ruled energy into a Venusian sign where it can kind of breathe, it can calm down, it can slow down. And that's not because somebody is telling it to or trying to force that to happen, but rather because this is simply an energy, especially with the moon being exalted here, to allow the nervous system to respond to the mind in a different way. And when the mind slows down, the nervous system slows down. And when those two work in conjunction with each other, they help create a sense of harmony that wouldn't otherwise be as easy unless you're manually forcing that to happen. So this is an energy that is supportive. Again, is not an ableist umbrella term for everybody to be happy and go lucky and have a regulated nervous system. Your individual case will be different dependent upon what you experience. Now, moving into the next aspect here, we have the sun and moon conjunction in Taurus, sextiling Jupiter in Cancer within a 4-degree orbit separation. Now, Jupiter in Cancer has been happening for quite some time. We also had a Jupiter retrograde that stationed direct on March 10th of 2026 within the last couple of months. So luckily for us, this isn't, you know, something that's brand new in a conversation in regards to Jupiter in Cancer. Now, the only thing that's different here is that Jupiter has moved out of the Plutonian ruled decan, which is the second decan of Cancer, and into the Neptunian ruled decan, which is the third and final decan of Cancer. And this is, again, sextiling, which is a supportive, creative tension energy rather than, you know, just a trine, which is straight support. It is sextiling the sun and the moon together in Taurus. And Jupiter is also exalted in Cancer, similar to how the moon is exalted in Taurus. And with that being said, the moon is the ruler of Cancer, like we previously discussed. So this is a really beautiful sextile energy. This is where that goddess energy is really being amplified and expanded, because Jupiter is the expander of astrology. It is the one that brings a lot of fortune and bounty and abundance and plentifulness, rather, even, especially with that sextile to Taurus being that material, that sensuality, that nervous system, that bodily response, and Cancer being the ruler of the moon in Taurus, with Cancer's planet of exaltation with Jupiter happening in the sign of Cancer. This is a really, really beautiful, spiritual, intuitive place. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of us experience a heightened sense of awareness when it comes to psychic ability, or psychic abilities becoming super grounded in the sense of like clairsentience, where your intuition, rather than communicating to you, let's say through claircognizance or clairvoyance of like clairsight or clear knowing, but rather in your body, where you feel intuitively through whether that's the energy centers that are in your body, such as the chakras, or if that is through your psychosomatic responses, or if that's through medical intuition in certain spaces for certain people. This is a time where that will likely be heightened, and easier to access, even if you don't find yourself routinely accessing clairsentience as one of your psychic awarenesses. Now, that's not to say that, clairvoyance won't exist, or clairaudience won't exist, or clairalience won't exist, or claircognizance won't exist. But I also wouldn't be surprised if, prophetic dreams were heightened during this time for a lot of people as well. This is a time where, with the sextiling to the moon, and the moon being the ruler of Cancer, Jupiter expanding, being philosophy, higher learning, spirituality, even travel in large groups of people in certain contexts, you could be having a lot of dreams with people that, whether you know them or not in this lifetime, or whether your subconscious is just projecting the image of somebody that you ran across in this lifetime or have seen before. If you're connecting with these people's spirits in the astral realm during the sleep state, with the moon being the ruler of dreams and of sleep and of the connection to the astral realm in that way, with Jupiter being so spiritual and the ruler of Pisces, in the Neptune-ruled decan of Cancer, which is also the modern ruler of Pisces. This is a double rulership of Pisces within the sign of Cancer, the ruler of the dream state in the astral realm, Pisces already being such a spiritual sign, and Jupiter and Neptune both being planets that are very, very beyond the veil and into the void themselves. This could be a time where your dreams are speaking to you. Not that you're getting like, oh my God, crazy download, I know the next step of my life because my dream told me, wow, wham, bam. It's more subtle, it's more soft, it's in that receptive, divine, feminine energy. And so I just wouldn't be surprised if that is something that you get to experience. I definitely know that leading up to this new moon itself, I have had quite the intense dreams that aren't necessarily prophetic, but are pointing in the directions of what I need to be doing and where I need to be going. So don't be surprised if you get some intuitive hits from your dreams as well. If you're a beginner in the world of astrology and you don't know where to start with learning about your natal chart, then check out my chart ruler reading. In this reading, I'll help you to identify the planet or luminary that governs the overall energy of your natal chart and break down the nitty-gritty of its condition and placement in your chart, as well as how it impacts you. This is the perfect reading for you if you'd want to dip your toes into the world of astrology without overwhelming yourself with all the other intricacies and complications that can come along with looking at your whole natal chart. So head to the link in the description box or in the show notes below to book a chart ruler reading of your very own. And now, back to Hummingbird Arcana. Now, moving into the next aspect here, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, has ingressed into Gemini, as we know, and that has happened towards the end of April. That happened on April 24th, and Uranus shortly followed on April 26th. Now, they were conjunct for a few days or so, and then Venus continued its journey onward throughout the sign of Gemini. And during the time of this new moon exactly, Venus will be at the end of Gemini at 27 degrees within the Uranus-ruled decan of Gemini, and Uranus will still be at the beginning of Gemini in the Mercury-ruled decan. So there's kind of not a full mutual reciprocity happening here, but there is this reciprocity happening between Mercury in Taurus, the ruler of Gemini, and Venus in Gemini, the ruler of Taurus. So there is a connection here. There's a little infinity loop being drawn between Gemini and Taurus and their ruling planets. So what that does, it also amplifies that Uranus in Gemini energy, and Venus being in the Uranian decan of Gemini, it amplifies that further. There's like almost like a tri-infinity loop that happens here to be able to not only soothe the mind and the body between Venus and Mercury, but also in ways that we weren't expecting with Uranus energy. This could be like, tying back to that example of, people who may experience disability or cognitive dysfunction or disorder, experiencing some sort of advancement in potentially a treatment for themselves that helps them live a better quality of life. This could manifest itself as creating a support system, or a support system manifesting itself for those people where there previously was none, or even just receiving some form of support that you didn't expect. Even just finding new ways of emotionally regulating ourselves that are unconventional or that weren't necessarily ideal before, but now for some reason are working. The best example I can think of this that would apply to myself currently, I have had a very, very, let's say, for the lack of a better term, dynamic relationship with my family, and the ways in which they have been able to support me from a psychological standpoint. Between my mental health, my spirituality, my autism and ADHD, fill in the blank with those kinds of things. And as of recently, and leading up to this Taurus New Moon, I have been able to find a lot of solace within my family members, despite the differences that we have and the things that we have put each other through, and our ability to process these things in new lights that we didn't see them in before, and be able to not move past them because they are still valid parts of our experience and we want to acknowledge them and honor them for what they are. But progress is being made in unexpected times, and it's not something that my nervous system was fully ready for, because I'm so traumatically programmed to be defensive or ready to prove myself to these people or prove the validity of my perspective to certain people. And right now I'm being met with compassion and with understanding, because these people are going through either similar experiences, or they're finally putting the pieces together, or I'm finally putting the pieces together in certain contexts, and it's creating this bridge between the gaps that was previously there and very divisive. And so even if it doesn't manifest on an individual level for you, between you and other people, or you and your health, or you and your mental health, or your psychological well-being, this could even manifest itself in a more societal way, because Gemini and Mercury energy and Uranian energy at that are very social energies. So this could be, there's some sort of progress when it comes to making movement in the direction of humanitarianism with society, and not necessarily legislation, but the ability for the people to have power with their voice again, to take that power back, even if it was taken away to begin with. So with that being said, the next aspect that I want to highlight here is that Mars will be exactly conjunct Chiron by degree and minute at 28 degrees and 24 minutes of Aries at the exact timing of this new moon, which rarely happens. There is hardly ever a time during a new or a full moon where other planets or heavenly bodies are exactly conjunct. Maybe by degree, yes, but not exactly by degree and minute. This is very rare, very important, very, very, very sensitive, potent. There are so many adjectives that want to come out right now, but it's that Martian energy of Aries of I can't talk enough about it, while also I want to skip over it because it's so intense. But for the lack of a better term, this is just a clusterfuck, even though it's not a whole bunch of activations in Aries like we've seen, especially with the Aries new moon that passed a month ago, and all the Martian energy that's been activated, especially with that Scorpio full moon as well. But this is happening in the Jupiter decan of Aries, which is the final and last decan of Aries, the last 10 degrees. And this is the most, for lack of a better term, explosive degree of Aries, or decan of Aries, excuse me. This is the most sensitive of Aries, because you think it would be Mars, the first decan, you think it would be the Sun, the second decan. No. Jupiter being the expander, and Mars being the ruler of war and conflict, and Aries being the most sporadic and most energetic, intense of the zodiac and all of the signs, period. This is a time where the wounds and the shadow of the divine masculine are being activated. They are being triggered, and they are being forced to learn from all the rest of the aspects that are happening with this goddess energy, this harmony, this balance, this forward movement, this unconventionality, this innovation. It is being forced to either surrender to the wisdom of the divine feminine, or to go out kicking and screaming. And this can manifest itself in a myriad of different ways. But I would highly suggest that during this new moon, that if you find that your wounds are being triggered more easily, whether that's by yourself or other people or by the world, that you can find a way to connect with your divine inner masculine and remind the metaphorical him. I'm not assigning gender, we're assigning a pronoun to the archetype of the divine masculine. That is the energy that exists within all of us. If you can remind that part of yourself, i.e. him, that there is nothing to truly be afraid of when it comes to the wisdom of the feminine. Yes, it is intense. Yes, it requires you to surrender. Yes, it requires great sacrifice and a level of faith in order for you to receive the medicine of the feminine. That is the true strength of the divine masculine, is to yield the authority to the feminine while also holding the space and creating the structure for her wisdom to flow through from within the source of our spirit. And there is that polarity, there is that dynamism that exists within our spirits. It's not a binary, it's a spectrum. And on the opposite ends of this spectrum exist these two forces that blend together to create the entirety of said spectrum. And when the masculine can stop being so rigid and stop being so controlling and, for the lack of a better term, just dogmatic about its need to operate within a certain way in order for the feminine to properly, quote unquote, properly express herself or allow for the wisdom of her divinity to flow through. And he can just surrender to the spectrum of it all. He can surrender to his divine purpose, and he can allow his wounds to be seen, and he can allow her wounds, aka the divine feminine, her wounds to be seen and honored, and there can be this mutual reciprocity between the two. Then that's when the true healing exists. That's when the true healing flows. That's when the true healing actually happens. And so I would encourage you that during this new moon to take time with your divine masculine, to sit with him in the presence of the divine feminine, with her, and to have them honor each other, to have them look at each other for their good, their bad, their ugly, their beautiful, and everything in between. Not to find compromise, but to find harmony, to find balance, to find unity with each other. Because despite them being perceivably opposite polarities on a spectrum, they are still connected through the unity of being on the spectrum in the first place. So if the masculine, Mars, can be stepping into the divinity of the Jupiter decan, then the Chironian wounds can begin to be resolved and healed. Even if they aren't 100% taken care of, they can begin to be healed and resolved. Now, moving into the next aspect, we have two more before we step into the themes of this new moon. We have Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And Pluto stations retrograde in Aquarius before this new moon happens. It happens on May 6th, 2026. And oh my goodness, we have seen Pluto retrograde in Aquarius so many times, but luckily for us, this is not a time where Pluto will retrograde and retrogress back into Capricorn. it will stay in the sign of Aquarius, and it will be there until 2042. So we don't have to fear the whole swinging back into that Saturnian energy beyond the fact that Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn. This is still happening in the first ruled decan of Aquarius, which is Uranus ruled, excuse me. This is Uranian decan of Aquarius, and this is rehashing and reevaluating all of the political corruption and the anti-humanitarian action that is being taken across the world, while also at the same time highlighting and exemplifying the exact opposite, where there is progressive leadership, there is humanitarian aid, there is action being taken to hold people accountable. And this is a time where, we might even see past experiences and grievances being brought back up to the surface. So I'm not saying, excuse me, there's a bird outside that is chirping and doing whatever. It's very late at night for that to be happening, but I digress. Excuse me if you heard that on the audio and I can't noise cancel it out. But this could be a time where we begin to see certain corrupt leaders maybe being held accountable. They might actually have some sort of legal reprimandation for the actions they're taking. We might also, equally and oppositely, see these leaders drag their heels through the dirt and try to kick and scream and create so many different distractions to keep that from happening. I mean, take a look at what the United States, quote unquote, leadership is doing right now, starting unnecessary wars with other countries to distract from the Epstein files. Don't come at me in the comments. I don't care what the political opinion is. This isn't political. This comes down to the people who take political positions of power doing corrupt things that are against the humanitarianism of their own people, let alone the people of another country, to distract from the fact of what they're doing on their own home turf. So we may see a lot of that still continue on, or we might also, and again, equally and oppositely, see the action being taken against these people to hold them to a level of accountability that they previously were dodging. And Pluto in Aquarius, I have a whole episode that I will be recording and releasing within the coming weeks, so keep your eyes out for that. But we will talk about all of the details and the nitty-gritty of what Pluto in Aquarius means. And to sum that up, it's basically the death and rebirth of humanitarianism as we know it. And take a look across the world at what's happening. This is absolutely the theme of what we see going on. So it is no surprise to me that that is what we are experiencing. So I digress. We move into our last aspect here, and we have Black Moon Lilith retrograde in Sagittarius opposing Uranus in Gemini. Now, we've talked about Black Moon Lilith recently. I talked about it in the Scorpio full moon episode, Black Moon Lilith being in Scorpio retrograde, having finally gone direct and moved into Sagittarius. Now she's retrograde again. And what she's saying is, okay, the repressed divine feminine energy is expressing herself in unconventional and unexpected ways, opposing Uranus and Gemini, Gemini being communication and Uranus being the unconventionality. Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius saying, you know what? I don't give a fuck about how you've hurt me and what you've done to me. I'm going to tell the truth about it. And if that makes you squirm, then maybe you shouldn't have done it. Right? So with Black Moon Lilith, this is again the part of the divine feminine who has been repressed, who has been shunned, who has been mislabeled and demonized and put into a cage to be told to be quiet and to, quote unquote, be put in her place when that was done so wrongfully to her. And with her being in the sign of Sagittarius, the truth teller, the philosopher, the teacher, and Sagittarius' ruler Jupiter being exalted in Cancer, the ruler of the moon. This is a very powerful time for her to light up her truth. And with the retrograde happening, she's going back over all the details of what people tried to cover up. And she's like, oh, no. Don't you get it twisted. Here's the details. Here's the truth. Here's the receipts. And you can't fucking escape that. I dare you to try. Good fucking luck. Karma's watching. That's what Black Moon Lilith retrograde in Sagittarius opposite Uranus is saying. If you're curious to see how this Taurus new moon will activate your natal chart and influence your energy, then go ahead and check out my lunar luminosity reading, where I help you look into how this new moon will be personally impacting you, along with insight on how to integrate the energy with it on the day before, the day of, and the day after. This is the perfect reading to get if you want to align your life with the natural cycles of the moon and work with her astrological archetypes. So head to the link in the description box below or in the show notes to book a lunar luminosity reading of your very own. And now, back to Hummingbird Arcana. So let's dive into the themes that we will expect with this new moon. I know we talked a lot about the aspects, the cosmic conversations that are happening between the planets and the luminaries, and a point in space, obviously, of Black Moon Lilith. But I want to talk about 3 points, and I want to talk about how to work with this new moon. So we have the slow climb. This moon is reminding us that the great things in life take time. Even if those great things are seemingly minuscule on the surface, the iceberg effect applies to them, meaning what we see on the surface is literally just a fraction of what lies below the depths of it, and should not ever be taken lightly. If you're cruising on, the ocean, God forbid we're throwing in the Titanic reference here, goddess rest those souls, they were like, oh no, there's this iceberg, we can avoid it, but then you try to avoid it a little bit because it looks so small and insignificant on the top, and you didn't even see what was going on beneath because it was so dark out, and the ocean isn't going to show you that. The ocean is unforgiving. So this is a time where we are being asked to honor what is below the depth, what we cannot see, what is not fully visible, even though it is worth honoring. And that iceberg effect really is the metaphor that applies to the slow climb here, because as much as Taurus is an energy with the new moon is the builder, it's also the one who is going to have the most endurance and the most, for lack of a better term, stubbornness and headstrongness to be able to see it through to the end. Capricorn knows its boundaries and will say, you know what, I don't feel like doing that. I'm going to call it quits here. Count me out. I'm a double Capricorn in my big 3, and I have a Capricorn stellium between my Sun, my Venus, my Chiron, my Mercury, and my rising. So I'm a 5 placement Capricorn by personal placements, and it's pretty, it's on theme for us to be like, yeah, nah, you count me out, bitch. I'm good. So we know when to say no. Virgo, with it being Mercury ruled, is very short. It's going to take care of things in a short amount of time. It's not going to waste too much of its time doing something forever. If it feels like changing, it will. It's a mutable sign. Taurus, it's a fixed sign, and it is going to take its time to get to the goal that it has fixed within its vision. And so this slow climb, this iceberg thing of like, well, there's more than what you're seeing, babe. Just you wait, because it may look like I'm doing nothing right now in the grand scheme, but oh, who's going to be laughing in 3 to 5 years' time? Who's going to be laughing in 30 years' time? Fill in the blank with whatever that is. And Taurus won't let go of that vision. They don't care what your thoughts are. They don't care what your opinion is. They don't care what you have to say. That's what's going to happen. And it won't matter because they'll be the one laughing all the way to the bank in the end, for the most part. And this is also the idea of the mandala, small changes over time that surmount to something bigger. The dots and the small designs on a tapestry that can only be done slowly and by hand that create a beautiful mandala on a larger scale in the end. And it can only be completed with patience and resilience. And that is exactly what Taurus as an archetype will do, especially with the moon being exalted in Taurus with this new moon. So the next theme that we have is rest as resistance and rebellion. Now, again, remove any ableist thinking from this whole idea, because there's so much of that pervades society, let alone the spiritual community in and of itself, with law of attraction culture and law of assumption culture and manifestation culture. Eye roll. Some people are disabled and literally cannot be expected to show up for others in that way, as they ideally like to, and that is valid and that is real. So that's not to say that people who are able-bodied or able-minded get to bypass their sense of social responsibility and duty to be good Samaritans, because this is a time that is honoring the people who need that rest even more than neurotypical or able-bodied people. And in the same breath, this new moon is again asking us to take into account what is needed to honor our nervous system in order for us to feel rested. And when we are well rested, when we can take care of ourselves to the best of our ability, we have more capacity to show up as an act of rebellion. So it's not just only resting and doing nothing and being passive as a form of rebellion, or ableist thinking, or colonial thinking, or fill in the blank with whatever label you want to project onto that. It is the fact that when you take care of yourself, you have the capacity to better show up, and also honoring that not everybody has the capacity to take care of themselves in the same way. So doing your best to take care of yourself however you fucking can is still your best, is still good enough, and is still an act of rebellion against the machine that would want you to do otherwise, against the quote-unquote powers that be want you to do otherwise. So honor the rest that you are being asked to take, and then at the same time utilize the capacity that that rest yields you to take the action in the right direction that is best for you and your loved ones, your community, the world at large, however that is that you can show up within your capacity, whether you are abled or disabled. Period. Point blank. Full stop. Now, the last theme I will talk about before getting into how to work with this new moon is that, again, this is goddess energy all over this new moon. So it's the Taurus exalted moon and the Venus ruled sign of Taurus. This is Cancer exalted in Jupiter, which is the ruler of the moon. This is again, like we talked about, intuition and receptivity and the natural rhythms of life that are being supported and highlighted. It's easier to feel regulated within the nervous system, but equally and easier access to the psychic information in our fields that our bodies literally cannot ignore from the intensity of this new moon. And this is also, again, in the sign of Taurus, and with that goddess earthy energy, this is a time where the seeds of hope are easier to plant, and listening to the earth is required in order to maintain that true alignment. Listening to your body is required to maintain that alignment. And without the earth, without our bodies, the earth, my body, the water, my blood, the air, my breath, the fire, my spirit, without the earth and listening to her, there is no future to hope for. So if you cannot listen to that receptive, divine, feminine goddess frequency within you, then you have no capacity to facilitate hope, let alone to teach it or offer it up to others. So pay attention to how the divine feminine is wanting you to show up. If that hope is you meditating and sending Reiki to a better future, do it. If that hope is you resting your body so then you can show up at a protest better tomorrow, do it. If that is you eating the foods that you need to, even if they're kind of junky and gross, but it makes you feel good, and then you have the ability to show up at work to better tomorrow so that way you can make the money that funds your mutual aid fund that's helping a family in Gaza, fucking do it. It doesn't matter what this looks like. Again, pay back attention to the mandala aspect, the mandala complex of this. Every small action that you take will contribute to the bigger picture. And the longer we sit here denying each other the validity or the impact of each other's actions that are progressive in nature, the further we perpetuate the division that the quote-unquote powers that be want from us. And it leaves us fighting a culture war versus a class war, which is the one we need to actually be fighting. So how do we work with this new moon? Get outside if it's safe for you to do so. If it's safe for you to step outside of your front door and put your feet on the bare grass and connect with the earth, do it. If you can not go outside and it's not safe for you to, and you have a house plant or even an animal / pet or emotional support animal, or even if that's a fake plant or a picture of a plant, or meditation sounds on your phone of outside and birds chirping and water running, connect with that. Speak intention into your food and your water. Those are the resources that come from the natural world that feed us to be able to take care and steward this world better. Do it. Wear comfy clothing that makes you feel comfortable and safe and harmonized within your body so you don't have to deal with a stimulus issue blocking your nervous system's ability to have capacity to tackle everyday monotonous life tasks. And lastly, take care of your body, whatever that looks like for you. If that's showering, if that is, again, eating different foods that nourish your body, if that is doing your skincare that, helps certain issues within your pH balance, if that is taking care of your insides with certain supplements and superfoods and vitamins, do that. If that is literally just getting the right amount of rest for you to have capacity to show up at all for yourself, let alone anybody else, do it. Fucking do it. Just do it. And if this is all a lot of information for you and you don't feel like unpacking this all on your own or making sense of it within the context of your chart by yourself, I do offer a lunar luminosity reading where I will help you look into how this new moon will be impacting your life, tailored to your specific natal blueprint. And I'll offer you advice on how to integrate this energy for the day of the new moon, the day before the new moon, and the day after, so that way you know exactly what to expect during the time that the moon will be in Taurus. And that link will be down below in the description box or in the show notes for you to book if you are interested or if you feel called to work together one-on-one. But no pressure. I am not asking for your money. I am not trying to leech off of you. I am here to support you and help integrate this energy so that way you feel less insane, because this is an insane world we are living in, and I want to show up for you, and this is the way that I get to, the way that is alignment with my mission and the way that the goddess wants me to show up. So with that being said, I will go ahead and leave it here for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. If you enjoyed and you're watching on YouTube, let me know by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the post notification bell so you're notified every time a new episode comes your way. And if you are streaming instead of watching, hi, hello, how are you? I would humbly implore you to leave a rating for the podcast and leave a review. And in that comment section of the review, or in the comment section on YouTube if you're watching, let me know, where is this Taurus new moon affecting you in your chart? If you don't feel like booking a reading with me to understand that for yourself, what house is this in? What's going on in your chart in comparison to your natal blueprint with this? I'm curious. Is there anything that you have that's in resonance with the themes that we talked about here today? Or are there any specific themes or ideas or aspects that are happening during this new moon that specifically stick out to you that you want to have a discussion with in the comments? Let me know. I want to hear from you. So again, I will leave it here, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I'm Jo Hummingbird. I always consider it my greatest and highest honor and privilege to assist you in awakening you to your cosmic divinity. Many blessings, and take care, my beautiful friends.